What's the Hold Up podcast? It is Dan, and excited to come back and have a guest again. Also excited because it is my first ever return guest. Jamie Kirsten Howard has joined me for a second time for us to honor the week of Halloween and talk about why do we think we love scary movies? What is it about scary movies that speak to us? What is it that they help us work on? How do we deal with our thoughts, our feelings, and our traumas through the lens of spooky movies? And it was once again something we could have probably talked about for 2 hours plus, but we had a lovely conversation. Jamie, as always, is an excellent guest. We forgot to throw this in, so I'll throw it out now. Jamie is an amazing social media manager, project manager in social and marketing and all of those types of things. And she is looking for full-time work. And I think she would be an asset to any of y'all's businesses. So if you get a chance, you should talk to Jamie about having her help you out with that. But once again, we are getting ready to talk about why spooky movies matter to us. We thought it would be a great topic for the week of Halloween, which I can't believe is already here. As always, this is available wherever your podcasts are found. Please like, subscribe, and share. And here is Spooky Movies with Jamie Kirsten Howard. What's the Hold Up podcast, where we look back and decide what things hold up, why they matter to us. And I'm really excited because it's a seminal moment. It's my first return guest, and I have Jamie Kirsten Howard on with me again to talk about spooky season in general and why, instead of any particular film, we're going to just talk about why scary things matter to us. So we thought it'd be a fun episode for Halloween, since this will come out Halloween week. So, Jamie, real quick, tell everybody where they can find you again, and then we'll dive in.
Well, hi. I didn't know that I was the first ever return guest. I mean, I guess technically I did because I listened to the show, but I was like, oh, honored. Thank you for having me back. You can find me as at Glitter Burrito across the internet. I feel like that's how most people who listen would know me as. And then on Instagram, I'm Jamie Kirsten Howard. And I'm also on horrormovieblog.com as Jamie Kirsten Howard with my monthly column. So obviously, y'all know me. You know how much I love Halloween. I love anything spooky, scary, macabre, and I love horror movies. So obviously, Dan, when you said, "Hey, do you just want to talk about spooky things in general?" I was like, "Hell yeah, brother!"
Yeah, so I thought it would be fun. So my very quick background on this is I am a coward, and I do not love that much the spooky stuff. I think I never shared this ultimately, but I am like a 47-year-old man who's still a little afraid of the dark. And I don't sleep well when I'm by myself. So
That's very valid. Real life fears are very, very valid. For people listening, look, y'all can tell me whatever you're afraid of in real life, and I'm going to be like, real. That's so true.
um, so it's an interesting place because I will still watch the occasional spooky movie or the occasional spooky TV show. We got into this a little bit on the Dawn of the Dead episode, that I can do
Yes.
zombie movies for whatever reason. That they are something I can watch and mostly get through. And I think part of the time is because, for the most part, they build the tension up and it does usually just pay off anyway.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, if the zombie's not in the place where they're building up to, it's coming like right after. So I can sort of prep myself.
Well, it's a material thing that you can stop, right? Like we all
Yeah,
know how to kill a zombie, or I guess re-kill it.
yes.
You know, it's the same thing with vampires, even if they're not as realistically capable, or I guess possible, as zombies. You know how to stop one.
Yeah. So, and that is, maybe actually it's an excellent point. We're going to move around, folks. There was not a run sheet for this. I just had a moment and I said, God, you know what? Next week's Halloween and I need to get Jamie back on to talk about spooky stuff, in general. So my childhood is not filled with watching a lot of scary things. I will read scary books though, or I used to, and I read a whole lot more. I do like horror novels, and I do like
Okay.
especially psychological, like I like
Yes.
psycho killer type stuff, right? So
Yes.
I was very big into like serial killer books and all of that type of stuff. So Silence of the Lambs is like a movie I went and saw like immediately, like as a child in a theater, because I
That is one
really want to
of
see that.
that is one of my all-time favorite films. Like not just horror, all-time favorite, hands down in my top 10, forever.
So I had zombies and I had that. That's my two things as a kid, which were very, very odd. Could not do like slasher movies, some other things. I would do sci-fi stuff. But what like would love kind of we were talking about therapy a little bit before this, but
Yes.
what for you, where was the moment? What was the seminal moment that started it off, and why do you think you identified with it so much?
Yeah, so I've briefly mentioned this on the Girl That's Scary podcast. Thankfully, Jazz and Kat have had me back on a couple times, but they always ask what your horror origin story is. But to give you sort of a more condensed answer than an hour long podcast, uh, I have always loved anything that gave me a sense of the otherness, the other world. So, especially growing up super Southern Baptist, as people have heard me say many a time in my life, where everything was sort of shiny, happy people all the time, 24/7, and you weren't really allowed to express those darker feelings.
Hmm.
But also, we would go to church on Sunday and worship a man who rose from the dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, child me was like, do we see the inconsistency here? And I will say that Christianity was my first exposure to gore. It
Hmm.
was my first exposure to death, dying, uh, the fear of the afterlife, the fear of something that I can't control, and
Hmm.
that there's this big, inevitable darkness that can take over if I'm not careful enough, which we could have a whole separate episode about developing neuroses from
Oh, yeah.
religion as a child. But Scooby Doo is one of my favorite cartoons. Scooby Doo is obviously kind of, I think, a lot of people's first introduction to the horror world. And then, in terms of books, I was obsessed as a kid with the Haunted House I Spy book.
Okay.
And so it didn't matter that I had found everything, I would just sit and look at it. And, I think I've mentioned before, sort of in our general conversations, how I started to read very young. I was hyperlexic. So, in 4 or 5 years old, I was reading full length, what would now be considered YA novels. And one
Hmm.
of the very first things I read was Frankenstein. And then I think the next thing I read was, it was a Stephen King, like, short story, you know,
Hmm.
uh, what are they called? Collections, I guess
Oh,
now.
like
I don't
his
know.
yeah, he would do
Like
yeah, he
Skeleton Key and stuff like that.
yeah, which were like a collection of short stories, an anthology. I
Yeah.
think is typically what you would call
Thank
like
you.
an
Oh my
anthology.
God.
Yeah.
I've gotten such little sleep this week, y'all, and I did not take my medicine today. So my brain is like a squirrel right now.
And so you're
But
perfect
yeah, and then
for my podcast.
correct. Well, and then of course, like, and I think I've mentioned this before too, sort of elsewhere, but I had pretty bad insomnia a lot as a kid. And so I would turn on the TV when everyone else was asleep. And, there was TV, now it's TV Land, but they would do Nick at Night, and then they would do sort of all of the older shows. So like Gilligan's Island, that kind of thing after cartoons went off. This was probably like late 90s, early 2000s. And I was obsessed with not only the Addams family, but the Munsters. And
Mm,
I just thought that Lily Munster was the most beautiful thing you could ever be in life.
mm,
And then, of course, I had an older brother. So he's 6 years older than me, and he had a lot more leeway. And so he would rent things. This is when you could still go to Blockbuster and
yeah,
rent
yeah.
movies. And I mean, we got away. I got away with watching clips of things, like little snippets. And my mom would be like, get out of Jonathan's room. You're not supposed to be watching this. But I don't know. I've kind of just always had a, this sounds really bleak, but like an inner darkness, like an inner
Eh,
melancholy, macabreness. I don't know what to call it, but it's always been there.
yeah, you know what's so funny? I don't think it's that bleak, right? Because I do think everybody has those moments, right? And everybody's upbringing and their personality and their people are about um to something you said, going to religion. That'll end up being a whole other podcast. I've actually thought
Yes.
about having Jason come on for an episode called
Please.
"What's the Hold Up Being Afraid of Dying and Going to Hell?" Because I think it
Yes.
would be something to kind of open up and go into. But we all have that. And for you, like, so I grew up Episcopalian. I grew up very, very kind of happy church and kind of healthier.
Yep.
But my dad was Southern Baptist, and my mom was oddly very mystical, always in her religion. That's why I think she turned Roman Catholic
Yeah.
older
Oh,
in life
yes.
because she likes that side of it. And I don't have, like she believes in demon possession, like all, and
Right.
I'm not going to judge, but she just all of those things are there. And to your point about like the near and around evangelical people, so like everybody's happy, you're happy all the time, and yet overarching everything is a life really based on
Dark.
fear, right?
Yeah.
On how terrified you are of going to hell, right? And I say that like we're not going to spend this whole time diving through it, but I think the point is how do I dive into that darkness and navigate that world in a way? And I do think being afraid and having a moments where you confront your fears. It's kind of like riding a roller coaster, right? Like horror
Exactly.
movies give us a roller coaster type experience sitting in our home to say, I was terrified of this and I got through the other side of it. The harder part with art though is whether it sits with you.
Oh, listen, and sometimes it sits for a long time.
I can't remember if I said this on when we were doing Dawn of the Dead or not. So I went and saw The Ring in the theater when it came out, the American version of The Ring.
Yes.
And I took the TV out of my bedroom in my apartment when I got back from the movie theater because I could not go
Yeah,
to sleep. I could, and I was a grown ass 24-year-old man, and
crying.
I carried it. I was like, I can't do this. I
You went
really,
full Mennonite. You were
I
like,
was
I
just
don't rebuke
no,
it.
it's out of here. I can't do this. I just saw that little girl come out of that
Crawl it
TV
out.
and it does not work for me.
So, so had you not seen Poltergeist yet? When you
I had, but not that much. I think I'd seen it kind of adjacently. I could do violent horror movies, right? And I don't
okay,
love them actually. Like I never was into
that's
like
what I struggle with.
I
Yeah,
don't like I was never super into the slasher type
yeah.
stuff. Like I've seen almost I think I've seen every Friday the 13th movie all the way up to like the older one
It's
like
like
Jason
all
takes
10 of them.
all
Yeah.
10 of them. Um and I don't like any torture porn type stuff. I don't
Oh
care.
yeah, no.
I don't, I can a little bit. I actually liked the first Saw movie, but it was more the psychological aspect of
I
it
was
that
gonna say that one's a little different. I feel like we
yeah.
kind of got bait and switched with that franchise, but again,
The
that's a
endings,
discussion for my other podcast.
the ending ruined what I thought was actually a really excellent kind of movie, right?
Agreed.
Up to
Agreed.
that point. But I'll say so two things, just in general, and then we'll go to the broader piece of it. Like, so one thing with Saw was, and I can always deal with, and it kind of works also saying like I like serial killer novels and all that type of stuff, right? There's an internal consistency to it.
Yep.
And it's people being punished at least in the eyes of the killer that they deserve, right? And I think maybe that's why the slasher movies never worked for me because it was the 80s and everybody was afraid of STDs, so everything's about having sex. It just seemed really stupid
Yeah.
to me even when I
Yeah.
was like 9 or 10 years old. I'm like, well, this is not
Dumb.
valid, right? Um and I think that's why I actually struggle with a lot of Japanese haunting horrors because
Yes.
people didn't do anything wrong except they moved into the wrong house. And maybe that's the other thing about like
Oof.
zombie movies or vampire movies or other ones where it's like, okay, there's rules here. Like Cabin in the Woods is one of my favorite films of all time because the whole movie is about the rules.
Fucking love that movie. Yeah.
It's the whole movie is about the rules of it. And those give me a way to navigate my fears, right? To carry it back to like the
hmm
point of all of this is like a way to say I'm using this to navigate and mirror over to what I'm actually worried about in real life. I think that's why horror movies speak to us a bit. And then sometimes they're just fun.
100%. Yeah, sometimes they're just fun, but 100%. So I say it all the time that horror is a pressure valve, like a pressure release for us. When the real world is scary, you can go back and look sort of when horror was more popular throughout the years and then when it dips again. And then, of course, what types of horror 100% trends with what's going on specifically in America, but also globally. Obviously, neither one of us likes torture porn, but the rise of those films came about post sort of midway through the Iraq um,
Hmm.
occupation, invasion, and everything, because people wanted to punish someone, like you said,
Yeah.
like they felt that we were wrong, do we want to punish them? But it's funny because a couple of things here. So I had my take the TV out of the room moment. The first horror movie I saw that I drove myself both to and from completely, it was shortly after I turned 16, was the very first Paranormal Activity.
Mm.
And I rode the entire way home with my dome light on in my back seat.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then and then I like kept my bathroom door cracked at my parents' house to like let the light in a little bit, because I didn't have a night light at 16. But it's the same thing of I didn't know the rules. Like you said, I didn't know there's not a way to avoid it because if a demon comes into my house, it's coming into my house whether I wanted to or not. And I was still deep into, youth group, religion in general. I was the hippy dippy Christian. Sounds like kind
Hmm.
of what your mom
My mom,
prior to
yes,
becoming
yes.
full tilt Catholic was, but just very hippy dippy, very mystical about it. And so I was like, I truly believed that that was possible, or at least, thought so on a level. And also, when you were saying the thing about that's why you couldn't get in the slashers, when I say online, and you and I have talked about this off pod too, I love Scream. Everyone that's ever heard me
Yes.
talk about horror knows that that's like my franchise. I love it so much. However, to me, slashers are scary because again, it's a real person thing. It's real people. It can actually happen. But I've also said something which is semi-controversial, especially in the pop culture world, which is that the majority of things made after like 1980 or so, like 1981 to like 1987, are kind of trash. Like I don't
Yeah.
really like anything from that era. It's just not my thing. And I think that you can go back and look at those slashers that you said, you as a kid didn't really get or enjoy or find scary. And again, kind of see what was going on in the world, like you said, with the STDs and things like that. And I mean, Reagan's America kind of says it all in a nutshell. But truly, horror is a pressure release for us. And then I always say that horror is the inevitable, no matter what genre you're talking about, because it puts us on this track of a big bad is coming, whether that's a little girl crawling through the TV, someone jumping out with a knife to stab us, or spiritual forces beyond our control. And that's life. Like I say all the time that we die at the end of this. That's what I was talking to Harry about on the our episode of How Did You Get Here? Like life is a horror movie, you guys. You die and your body rots. Like so I don't know. I have a lot of complicated feelings, as you guys can hear.
Yeah, well, but I think that's okay, right? Because to me, like broadly, art is about giving us abstractions and analogies to
100%.
move through life, right? And I do think scary stories, they give us two things, right? In the historic of like mythological and scary beings in general, gave us a way to deal with just things we could not understand, right? In a world that we understood less. Um, but interestingly enough, okay, so we define those things, right? So we figure out to not be afraid of the dark or whatever else, or wolves and monsters and all of those types of things. But I do think we've moved to like, but now the world doesn't make sense, right? Like that is today. I'm very curious to see like, and to your when we'll look back in 10 years, what is the horror we're having right now in a world that to me just has no logical consistency. Like
Yeah.
I was everything, right? My Mugatu joke, right? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. That is like
Yeah.
every day of our existence right now,
It's so true.
because both of us could look at a blue sky and, or I can find a complete stranger who's in an opposite worldview than me, and it's just like we do not see the same thing. And I
Yeah.
don't know how we navigate that. So it'll be so I know you just saw it and I haven't seen it yet, but it is one of my favorite first horror stories is Frankenstein, because I do think
Yes.
that's about a person navigating a world that didn't make any sense to them. It's also a bit about parenthood. I say this as a father.
It is. Well, you have to listen to GDT was just on Fresh Air this week. You have to go listen to the interview
Okay.
with him. It's incredible. He talks about it being sort of, as a child, he related to it because he saw his father in Victor. And then as an adult, now that he's a father, the reason why the story has stayed with him for so long is that ability to break this cycle of the father passing down his own sins to the son. And to go back to what we were saying with, your mom and like our religious upbringing, he was raised Catholic and he says all the time his grandmother loved him very much, but she's tried to exorcise him 3 times, which I think is hilarious. But he talks about how even Frankenstein can be an allegory for Jesus. I mean, he's created, he can't really die, but he has to take on a world of suffering and he has no way to get out of it. Like it's not his choice. I mean, yeah, I was goosebumps during that whole film. You guys, I'm so excited for people to go see that movie.
No, I can't. I'm really excited to see it. I remember because right, like as a kid before I read it, so most people, right, growing up, they're Frankenstein and the Frankenstein's monster. You mentioned Scooby-Doo, but it's based upon the Universal horror, which has like just nothing
With
to
Boris
do
Karloff.
with Boris
Yeah,
Karloff, which
yeah.
is an amazing performance, and there's a lot of great stuff there, but they did not capture like the spirit
No,
at all of Mary
no.
Shelley's book. And so for me, I remember being shocked. We did this because we were reading it when I was in high school. We went and saw the Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein in high school. We went and
Oh,
watched
it's
that movie
so good.
with De Niro as
Yes.
Frankenstein's creation, who I refuse to call Frankenstein's monster because he was Frankenstein's creation.
He is.
And right, and it is funny. I didn't get it at the time, but you look back on it. Like I, one of my ultimate parenting beliefs was, and I think it is a change of generational stuff, was, yeah, my kids didn't get a vote about being born, right?
Right.
They did.
Oh,
No one asked them. And
I
their
could talk about this forever. Sorry, continue.
So the obligation is unilateral me to them
Correct.
because I did something in essence against their will. Like if we want to overstate it just a little bit.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
like I think they're happy to exist. They wouldn't know otherwise if they didn't. But at the
Right.
same time,
Right.
the point is, and I think that's like ultimately it's funny enough, we joked about it playing 40K
Yeah.
underneath that, and it fits with
Yeah.
with Frankenstein because these are ultimately stories about bad dads, and
Mhm.
and um and
I took a sip of, sorry, for people listening, I had just taken a sip of my Coke Zero and Dan said that.
what I said story, but 40K is a story about a bad dad.
Stories about bad
Um,
dad.
it really is. But it's an ultimate tie up also together. It's also stories about what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to hold on to your humanity? How do we instill the right values in people? And I do think once again, horror gives us kind of that, right? And that's where those stories fit so well for me. And I think why Frankenstein just sits so well with all of us. And once again, it's a great time to do it. Like, what are our responsibilities to the people we bring into this world? And what are our responsibilities for their behaviors as well?
And also, I mean, how do you define someone's humanity? It's throughout the entire story is okay, he's alive, his cells are alive, his heart's beating, but is he intelligent? And Victor brings that up again and again in the novel and the book. And I don't want to get into any spoiler territory, but there's a couple, more than a couple of scenes in Del Toro's film that are only in the book that have never been done on film that are so deep and touching and emotional and moving that I love that man anyways. I love everything he does. But you can just see the thought and the care that got put into the story and why it's included. And you were talking about, maybe we're going to look back in 10 years and see what kind of horror we got during this 2020s time period. I think it's obviously it's already started because we're halfway through the decade, which, wow, crazy to think about. But it is this idea of we are now capable of creating things like AI. I mean, it's a very obvious through line for me from this, from a couple of other things that have been at film festivals and a couple other wide releases, where we created this thing and we really can't control it. And it only knows what we teach it. And ultimately, I mean, we can't put it back, we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube with it, you know?
Yeah.
So, it's just, there's so many layers to it. And also, even going back to Nosferatu, which y'all know how I still am obsessed with that. And then, of course, we get Interview with the Vampire, the TV show, and we're getting the Vampire Lestat TV show. Thank you, Anne Rice from Beyond the Grave. There's this whole idea of there can't be other vampires unless those vampires make other vampires. So they have to grapple with their choice to make Claudia an Interview with the Vampire and sort of how are we handling the fact that she's going to be 14 forever physically and mentally she's 110, you know? So sort of what we owe each other to goes, I think, for so many other genres, especially slashers, with protecting each other and trying to figure out what's going to keep each other safe. I could go about this for so
Oh no,
long. So
I know we could. I will say also one of my favorite just general, and Frankenstein fits into this, but we don't have to talk about it forever. One, because I haven't seen the movie, but I know the general story.
I was gonna say you know the story.
Everybody knows the story. So I also love a really great horror movie or scary movie where the monster's really not the villain. I
Love that. Love it.
I'm a big big fan of those. And saying like early slashers, which is like, so you gotta get a little bit of both of those in the very first Friday the 13th is a little bit of that. It's the only one of the one
Mhm.
I'll sort of enjoy, right? And even he is the monster, the villain, but I still think there's just some through lines to that, even to the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Just general,
Oh, I thought you
just
were going to say the original Texas Chainsaw
there's
Massacre
that
because
too. Yeah,
that's one of my all-time favorite films as well. And Leatherface is, I mean, hopefully people have seen or
I
at
don't
least
think
know
you
the
can
story at
spoil
this
this.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a creation too. And it's a
Yes.
family that is spoiled by a bad dad
Yeah.
who's now the grandfather. And Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, is the reason he's like that.
Yeah. And I think those are always so interesting. And I think I want to say Wes Craven, but that's not who. So have you ever seen Nightbreed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah.
It's been a while, but that's also in that, right? Like they're a society of monsters, but the monsters are not the villains, right? That's always a fun. I always like things like that. That's Wes Craven made it, but damn, Clive Barker. That's
I
who.
love, listen, yes.
Yeah, and I like. So
Hellraiser 1 and 2,
I
Chef's
can
Kiss.
I can do both of those. I can do all the Hellraiser stuff because once again, that's always.
Really?
I don't know why. I think it's an internal logic. It's consistent.
Also,
Um,
the gore is so it's I love a goopy.
yes.
And so it's so fake and over the top. And so I will say Frankenstein is a body horror, no pun intended, like not even trying to be funny. It is.
Yeah.
And so same thing with any sort of Italian. I love giallo
Mm.
and that's like all the proto, slashers. They're opera, greatly influenced Scream. I love opera. It's one of our favorite horror. But to your point, yeah, like a lot of times the monster's not actually the villain.
No, it's a or they're just they like I like werewolf stories too, right? Because it's
Yeah.
always an interesting one. That's speaking of what it is, like werewolf, the werewolf genre is about dealing with our own dark side and how we feel about it. And like as a comic book fan, most of us got that with the Hulk because that's supposed to be the
Yeah.
whole point. How do I deal with my rage and what
Right,
happens
right.
with all that? But those I don't know, those work for me. I think the thing with Hellraiser, why I could always do that, is where
Yeah.
I struggle. I always, God, I sound like such an online asshole. As an empath, it's very tough.
No, I get it.
That's why I don't like torture porn, right? Because once
I
again, I don't
can't.
think those
Yeah.
people do that. I can put myself like, so the whole thing that works about Hellraiser is like, well, shit, these are people who ultimately signed up for this.
For this. Well, and
Like,
same thing with I think I've mentioned this before, but the beginning of Pet Cemetery, I cannot do.
yeah,
I sobbed my eyes out the first time I saw the new one, and I was with a boyfriend at the time, and he was like, "Are you good?" I was like, "No." Like it's too when it's that level of stakes involved, when it's children who are
yeah.
being hurt, that's a big one for me that there's a lot I can watch, but that's not one of them.
My
And then
mom can't do Stephen King for that very reason
it's
because
so
he
hard.
uses kids so much in most of his stuff. It's really interesting how often kids being killed is a big part of Stephen
Yeah,
King's.
I was gonna say now that you say that. Well, I've read all of it, but have you seen or read Doctor Sleep?
I think I
So
read it.
good.
Yeah.
So good. I think she could handle that one because ultimately Abby sort of becomes her own savior in certain ways, but I digress. And something else that we haven't really touched on yet that I definitely want to make time to talk about, but kind of same vibe with the big bad isn't really the villain sometimes is Peel. I mean, Jean Jacket from Nope is just being Jean Jacket. She's an
Yeah.
otherworldly creature. She's an animal, and she's
Yeah.
just behaving like what she
Us
would
is
kind of behave.
about just creating, creating clones of it. Like what it falls right back into that. They didn't get a vote about being made, and then they definitely
Yes.
didn't get a vote about having to sit there for us to harvest them, right? Like so just like
Wild. Yeah.
Gattaca, right? Like so I'm used to the
Yes, I
sci-fi
was about
version
to
of
say
that.
like that.
Right. So those are interesting things, right? And that kind of goes into our creation that we let out of control and those through lines that happen at the same time. Yeah, I when people don't deserve what happens to them in a horror movie,
That one
I
hurts.
struggle
Yeah.
with that. And I mean it's not always, but I'm like there needs to be some kind of payoff or something into it. I actually saw a great I can't remember. I think it was a TikTok. This guy I really like, and he was talking about the original Night of the Living Dead and how it was great
Oh, that
because,
ending.
well, but there's this argument. And he goes, this is so rare because there are two people. They're arguing about should they lock themselves up in the basement or should they defend the
Or stay in
house.
the house. Yeah.
And he was like, this was great because you rarely see this in movies because they both had a point. And they were
Yes.
neither like a lot of movies. And I think this goes to your point about why the mid 80s ones sucked so much because it was just like, there was no work for us. There was no point. Somebody's
No.
obviously right and somebody's obviously wrong. And the stupid people are stupid. He actually even used those. He goes, I can't see another kid investigate a sound outside in
Right.
the middle of the night. Like he goes, no one, you wouldn't do this in a world that didn't
No
have
one does
monsters in
that.
it, right? I'm not
Right.
wandering outside in a place I don't know at 2 o'clock in the morning to hear a sound. No, right? Like, and I just thought he talks about that, and those are the piece of this. Like, great horror is also like putting people in situations where you go, oh, this is really unreasonable, and how do I navigate
Yeah.
through this? To go all the way back to your point about, well, life is like that.
Yep.
There's just unreasonable expectations out of the blue placed upon us. And even as capable people, how do we respond to that? And sometimes not well.
And right. I was just about to say sometimes phew, horrible, horrible ways. And horror also gives us permission to explore ideas that we might be uncomfortable discussing in quote unquote real life. So things like what makes a human a human? Where does their divine spark come from if you believe in that divine spark? What is consciousness? Could you kill someone if you had to get out of a saw trap? Could you saw your own leg off? And then it loops back into, especially with Peele and from the first movie onward, sort of these social ideas, but looking back straight off the rip with the original Night of the Living Dead and Psycho and things where we can go back and look and see this is the way society punishes people who are not making choices that the larger, broader in group approves of. I mean, in Psycho, the whole reason she's driving to the hotel is because she's having an affair and swindling
And
away money.
and embezzled a whole bunch of money
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
bank, right?
And there's so many examples. And I talked about this on our Bloody Broads episode with weapons, where my one beef with Kreger's right now is in, and I'm giving him more movies. So don't crucify me, y'all listening. I'm giving because I want to work with him. He's wonderful. Always shouts out Atlanta, gives his work here. I need to see a movie from him and a couple of other directors that I won't name right now, where the villain is not just an old lady.
Mm.
Like, and for to kind of snowball off of that, it's funny because I was thinking last night. So, people listening who don't know, I work at Netherworld during the season. And one of the characters I portray is the bride of the Nosferatu, and she's got age makeup on. And even though I'm young elsewhere, but every night that I've been her, I've gotten more scares from men than when I'm in the other parts of the house or the show. There's two huge shows where I've had pretty gory special effects on.
Hmm.
And I don't mean like a jump scare. I mean like they were leaning away from me, revolted after they saw me. And I don't think it's not a conscious thing that people are choosing to say, I'm afraid of old people. But it happened with Ty West in X and then in Pearl. And I love that whole trilogy. I love all three of the movies. But Ty West is also another director where it's like, okay, the big scary thing is they're old. Like
Aging, the thing we're all
yeah.
our natural
Well,
fear
and
of death. Yeah.
absolutely. And I've been grappling with that. I mentioned it in our group chat. This birthday for some reason just felt like shit. Like I'm getting up there, even though I know Dan's making a face like rolling
No,
his
no, no,
eyes so hard,
no.
listeners.
I'm
But
not. I'm not. It's so funny. Because I can look back on it.
yeah.
I 30 was really hard for me when I turned
See, I was
30.
excited about 30. It's this
I was
last one that I was
excited
like,
about
ooh.
40. It was really weird. I was
Yeah,
excited about 40, and now as I think about it, I'm getting kind of excited about 50, and I don't know
you
why.
should be.
But it was weird. Like I think I'm more comfortable. Like it all
Yeah.
depends on where you're at in time. But no, I'm not judging. Like 30, I really went through a little mini crisis
Yeah.
about that. So aging, I get it, but it is like also where's the payoff in it, and what are we challenging ourselves with? I think to me that's what like the best spooky horror stuff is, like you said, I don't want to sit with just being scared. I want to sit with what it made me feel about me.
Unsettled. Yeah.
Yeah, how unsettled
Yeah.
I was and why am I so unsettled and what is it about what was going on that made it work, which is why like as great as it is, I don't actually consider Cabin in the Woods fully a horror movie, right? Because
No,
it's
yeah.
a
It's horror comedy.
deconstruction, it's a horror
Yeah.
comedy like Shaun of the Dead. Um the only thing that was great about that I loved in that, and I'll tie it back to 40K very lightly, um, was I loved that he made an interesting choice, which was and that it had the payoff, which was the Elder God's hand actually coming out to destroy the world
Yes.
because there was a this is a big part of the 40K universe, which is all about like the Emperor sucks and all these other things. But he's trying to do it to save humanity. But to me, the question you push back on it is to say, but is everything he trying to do at the expense of us still being human? Right? That's
Exactly.
like, did we give up our values so far that it wasn't worth it? And I always loved that was the best part to me about the payoff of the end of Cabin in the Woods is he was like, you know what, this isn't worth it. If this is what
Nope.
it takes to stop being destroyed, then maybe we should just be destroyed because it's better. So I love those little types of things sometimes too, where sometimes the protagonists have the moment of realization of maybe we deserve this.
Yeah, it's oh man, I could talk about that kind of stuff forever because I think that that's where a lot of people are right now emotionally.
Mhm.
Sort of if this is what America looks like,
Yeah.
and Italy and Germany and like several other countries that are having issues right now, what's worth saving? Like what about this institution is worth going through all of this for? Crawling through the prison pipe to get out the other side
Right.
and
Right.
Shawshanking it. Well, well, you're still covered in shit when you get out the other side. So what's the deal? And are you really free? But there's so many good horror movies that and TV shows and books that explore these feelings of hope. And I think that that's something that you and I really relate to with Del Toro. And before we hit record, we were speaking briefly about why we both love him. All of his movies end on a upbeat note for the most
Hmm.
part.
Hmm.
Some kind of hope, some kind of we're going to be okay. And that's why I love the ending of Chainsaw Massacre so much. The original, she's this iconic shot of, her in the bed of the truck getting away, covered in blood, just cackling because she's like, I can't
Yeah.
believe I'm alive. And my God, if that's not a metaphor for reality, I don't know what is.
Well, yeah, Florence Pugh smiling at the end of Midsommar, right? Like,
Midsommar. Oh my God.
right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, how do I feel about this? But there's a point that's always, I think it's actually why, it's funny you say that. It's why I hated the end of House of 10,000 Corpses,
Hate that movie. Hate it. Sorry,
but
continue.
I love The Devil's Rejects.
Oh,
And
interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I like Grindhouse. So that's another weird,
Oh, I like
like,
Grindhouse.
I can
I
do
like Grindhouse a
Grindhouse
lot.
type stuff, and Devil's Rejects really a
Yeah.
Grindhouse movie. Um, but it doesn't end with hope, but it just ends with an ending, and it sort of ends with them, like once again, them accepting. It's also great that the protagonists are the villains from the previous movie, the main characters, if you will. They're
Love
not
that.
good guys, and them
Yeah.
accepting like we don't deserve to live, right? Like we
Yeah.
are bad people, and they had their journey and their realization and going, I have to end with this. Versus, like, once again, I hate anything where in the fiction someone is like just punished because I understand real life is like that. I absolutely get that. But you know what? That is what real life is like. There's enough, like, I'll be dark for a second. There's enough little kids who get cancer who didn't deserve it. There's enough people who
Yeah.
die in car
Yeah.
accidents. Enough people, all of that shit that didn't happen. I don't need that in my genre fiction, right?
Yeah. Right.
There's plenty of that in the real world that I can see. And I think that's why the very end of House of 10,000 Corpses, plus it was just a movie all over the fucking place. But
Oh, yeah.
like,
We
but
don't have
her
time to
to
get into
not
that.
escape at the end, like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what? She did nothing wrong. Like, this was a bad, that whole premise bothers me sometimes.
Yeah.
The
And
last girl deserved to escape. To tie it back to Cabin in the Woods, the last girl
yeah,
deserved to escape.
she's the final girl. What in the
Yeah.
world? Like, why are we not following the rule of the final girl? Right. But I recently rewatched Signs for the first time in God knows how long. And not the TV edited version, but
Mm-hmm.
the actual just straight through on streaming right now. And there are so many moments like that that there's no hope. And I was like, I don't need this right now. I can't finish this movie. And aliens are the one thing that truly, truly scare me
Oh,
in sort of the realm of is it real? Is it not? They terrify me to no end. And I don't really have any explanation that's not a deep psychoanalysis that we don't have time to get into. But you were bringing up there's enough car accidents, there's enough kids that get cancer. The famous scene that they lampoon in one of the scary movies where Mel Gibson goes to talk to his wife and she's like pinned in the truck in the car accident, but she's somehow still alive.
yeah.
What the fuck, M. Night Shyamalan? Like that movie messed me up. I think because that actually happens in real life
Yeah.
and it's a morbid fear of mine. Anything with cars is a big one for me. I get very cagey about that. But I still like Maximum Overdrive. But it's a weird spot, and he's good at that too. I think with sort of bringing in those moments of characters accepting their fate, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like Signs a lot. I actually
I do.
really
It's just really scary.
it's scary. It's a tough movie because it doesn't end in a hope or end in acceptance. Maybe sometimes it's
Yeah.
not always hope. Sometimes you just have to, and maybe that's as much as we get out of life. Sometimes is just
Listen.
acceptance, right? Like, right? We'll serenity prayer our way through
Yeah.
this.
I was gonna say Brother Dan taking us to church.
And so I do enjoy that. It's funny, it's interesting since we brought up Stephen King and to think about you mentioned Shawshank and how
Oh,
actually that is him taking his horror roots into something completely different, but it's actually the exact same concept, right?
yeah.
A literal no way out but through uh type moment. Uh
Creepy.
but yeah, the whole world of it, and I'm trying to think like other genres I react well to. Alien stuff, it's funny, I can do sci-fi, but I don't like alien horror. Like that
That's what it
is
is. Because I love Annihilation, which
yeah,
also scared the shit out of me, but is such a good movie.
it's just too good. That's one
Yeah.
where it's like sometimes the movie's so great, I'm like I will deal through all of this to go through the movie, but like so the first Alien's very difficult for me. Aliens is very
Ooh,
easy because
I love it.
Alien is a horror movie, Aliens is a sci-fi action movie that
Exactly.
right and like I can do Predator and those all of that stuff is the same and that's once again I don't know sometimes whether or not there's rules and does it feel earned or not is where I have the challenge. And you mentioned body horror. That's another one. I'm not a
It is very dependent on the situation.
yeah.
And we love Cronenberg over at Bloody Brides. We affectionately call him Uncle Grandpa Goopy. He's amazing. We did not coin that term. Sheree Bohannon from Nightmare on Fear Street coined it, but she and I have worked it into our lexicon on both of our shows and on our writing. And it's so dependent on the situation. And I was going to ask if you had seen The Substance because I feel like that's one that takes the fear of aging and sort of subverts it. And it's just so well written and acted and directed that it's so good.
I think I'm familiar with it, but I've not seen it because
Watch
body horror is a really tough one
it.
for
Yeah.
for me. And that's actually though funny you mention it. Some of the more intriguing things I've seen from that wasteland of mid 80s stuff is some of that
Yeah.
more independent body horror type stuff
Absolutely.
where you're like, okay, there's at least some concepts in here, but it's kind of counterculture at that point in time.
100%. Because at the time, I mean, you were the one that was, this is going to sound really mean, but
I
it's
was
not.
alive then.
You were alive.
I knew where you were going with it. Yeah.
I said that to Ryan once, and he was like, I just crumbled into dust. But I think about things like The Fly, and I think about
Yeah.
things like everything that Lynch was doing. And I'm a
Yeah.
huge David Lynch fangirl. And his is not strictly body horror, but I think there's plenty of it in his work. But it's absolutely counterculture because I think about how coiffed and how polished and how over the top and how set beauty standards were. And we're seeing such strict beauty standards right now. I mean, Trump administration face is a thing, right? Like all
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
fillers and the Botox. I saw a before
That
and
is
after
not
of
what
Christy Nome the
Christy
other
Nome.
day.
Yeah, so you and I went to the same place. I was like, Christy Nome did
Same
not look
place.
like that 5 years ago, right? Like,
Jump scare, y'all. Go look up that picture. Horrifying, truly. That's the real horror. But it's even sort of even beyond the surface level discussion of female beauty standards and whatever. It's a control thing. And then there's sort of the other pipeline because now we're talking about it, I think, more openly with men's health things with steroid use and extreme dieting actually being a form of orthorexia and eating disorder and how that impacts your mental health. And, it's tough all over for everyone, y'all, is what I'm trying to say. But I think horror, by exploring those tough to talk about things, like we said earlier in the episode, teaches us empathy in a way that other genres can't. Like, I can't get on board with empathy in rom-coms because I'm like, your life is going to turn out perfectly. Like, I already know how this ends, It's
yeah, it's no, it's well,
same thing
that's
with comedy.
yeah, it's you. That's why I like a comedy. I like.
I like
I,
action comedy a
I
lot.
like an action comedy. I like horror comedy, or
Yes.
I do like a dramedy, like,
Ooh,
and what I mean
yes.
by that, even so, one of my favorite movies of all time, and we won't like digress too far, but I really love The Big Short because it's like
I love that movie.
here's all these horrible things happening, and we tell it in this very funny kind of way,
Yeah.
and it's funny because it's so absurd that we get there. So I love that, and it's the same thing like to do a Shaun of the Dead or
Yeah.
any of those types of things where like because I still think I'm really excited because Kyle Banduho from Big Screen Sports, they're doing Shaun of the Dead. I just got a thing about it, and I'm really
Oh,
excited.
so excited.
They might be
Yeah.
recording it right now, as a matter of fact. But like he made a point about it, and I'm kind of excited to see because that is like it's actually a really poignant film. And it
Yeah.
surprised me the first time I went to go see it because I was like, oh, this is going to be a fun. These are funny people. I know they're
Lighthearted.
funny. It's
Yeah.
going to be very lighthearted, and it's really sad at some points,
Listen,
and in a way that even other horror movies don't always go into, right? And
right.
all that. So I just that the sprinkling that in, but horror, I think it wouldn't have worked as well if you'd have made it a pure comedy, right? Like it's the
Agreed.
horror
100% agreed.
aspects kind of give you this in the weirdest way. The horror moments are what release the tension of the real story in
No,
Shaun of the Dead.
that's so true. And it's also how I felt about, saying I don't hate all rom-coms for people listening. I just
Yep.
have very specific tastes in them. Hard Eyes that came out back in February, my friend Josh Rubin that had a hand in writing, directing, and all that good stuff in it. I mean, it is a horror rom-com and horror first, rom-com part second. And I think that's my beef with a lot of horror comedies that they're actually comedy horror. And I don't
Yeah.
like that. I don't think they're funny. Like, sorry. But Shaun of the Dead is funny to me. It's sometimes I go back and watch parts and I'm like, oh, woof, this did not age well in certain aspects. But there's other, it's the difference between a Shaun of the Dead and a Hard Eyes versus a scary movie. And I do not
Yeah.
like the scary movie franchise. I don't like gross out humor. It's not my thing. But uh, with to your point, the horror was a pressure release from this very sad backstory in both Shaun of the Dead and Hard Eyes and her struggling at her day job and everything else. If you haven't watched it, you got to go.
I'll
It's
put that one
so
down.
good.
That sounds really,
It's a Valentine's horror rom-com and it's
oh, so that's,
hilarious.
I will give that a go because that actually does sound very, very up my alley. You were talking about the aging thing and fear of it, and
Yeah.
so my other genre that I've always said that I could handle is vampires, and that's
It's my fave.
it's another perfect one because it is entirely, it's actually an allegory for what price are you willing to pay to be young forever. That
Mhm.
is absolutely what van well, there's some sex and mixed into and
And
all of that.
also a little bit of the fear of you have to deal with the fact that how do you give life meaning when there is no end date,
Yeah.
which is obviously discussed in Frankenstein as well. And as someone who has a bazillion creative ideas and feels like she's always running out of time, me at my current early 30s, I'm like, yeah, like turn me right now. But I know in like 10 years, I'm going to be like, oh no, like, oh. But to your point, it's this fear of not only aging, but I think fear of this losing out, like you said, on, okay, well, now that I've done this to stay young forever, what does it cost? And it's the same thing with the substance. I argued at the time that the substance could have been a vampire movie. It's just not. Instead, it's
Hmm.
a you have to hide for 7 days movie, which very similar, I feel like, to certain vampire rules. And yes, for me, vampire stuff was a way as a teenager to explore sexuality safely because of being raised in a very strict religious Southern Baptist, specifically evangelical upbringing, where I was being told don't date, don't kiss, don't even hold hands. But then also I got accused of my mom of being gay, and I'm like, what do you want me to do?
It's really funny. My parents, so I had they found out I was sneaking Playboys with a friend, and the relief on their face,
They were like, oh, thank God.
thank God he's not gay, right? Which, when you
I'm dying.
which is, if there's any will, God, whole other episode about
Yes.
my mother. I remember my mom moved to the Midwest. This is a very quick digression.
No, I love it.
Moved to the Midwest with my stepdad. Great. She made new friends out there, and they had not met me, and they'd known my mom for a couple years. We finally come to meet it, and they beat me, and they are like, you are absolutely the scientific proof that sexuality is nature and not nurture, because I really thought you were going to be like Liberace level gay. That is what they told me, knowing that what my mom was like and that
Well,
she
now I'm
raised me.
disappointed you're not
Yeah, I was like, sorry. I
kidding,
can talk
kidding.
China patterns for a really long time. Not a lot of people know that about me.
Love
Um,
it.
so, but it is, yes. So, yeah, my parents were so relieved. I was like, wait a minute. Wait,
What
I
what
don't,
did you think? Like, I
what?
don't understand.
Well, and also, I'm 13. I still got lots
Right.
of time.
Oh yeah, no, I was like maybe 14 or 15 when my
Yeah.
mom point I was 15. My mom point blank just goes, "Are you gay?" And I was like, No, I actually really find like all of the guys in bands that I go see at the core very attractive." That was a very niche reference for me and Dan and other people from Columbus,
Yeah.
Georgia, Phoenix City, Alabama. The core was a venue for bands, but anyways, we digress. It's so interesting to me that people will sort of put down horror as this not as prestigious thing. And then thankfully, I feel like in the last 10 years or so, that's turned a corner. I don't
Yeah.
know about you, but obviously The Substance getting nominated, Shape of Water, which is more sci-fi than anything fantasy than horror, but it's still Del Toro getting nominated for a ton of things and winning 4 Oscars. You know, it's been so long though since we've had a honest to God, I don't know, like a straight run through, like kind of like how The Exorcist did. You know what I mean? Like where, because yes, The Substance won a lot of awards, but it's kind of campy.
Yeah.
I mean, it is campy. It's more
No, I
goofy
mean,
than
The
scary, in my
Exorcist is
opinion.
I was in college when The Exorcist came back out. Last, I think it was the 20th anniversary of it. Yeah.
Anniversary, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the 20th anniversary of The Exorcist. I was like a senior at Tech. And it was funny. We went and did Netherworld at the time, and then
Yes.
we watched The Exorcist. And I
Your nervous system was just like,
I
why?
was really shot at the end of that, and I had never seen. I believe it or not, I had never seen The Exorcist before. So I saw it in a theater. The very first time I ever got to see The Exorcist, I got to watch it in a
Holy
movie
shit.
theater. Um, that movie's just outstanding, right? Like
Phenomenal.
it's kind
It's
of
not
like,
scary, but my God, it's so
no,
good.
no, it's really not scary, and that's actually, and that's a whole aspect of the horror genre we have not gotten into, which is some, we call it spooky season, but not all of them are very scary, but they're disconcerting, or they make us feel things.
Unsettling.
Very unsettling. Unsettling is such a great word, which is probably why, like, there's scary moments a little bit in Silence of the Lambs, but mostly that's an unsettling movie, and I maybe people are more comfortable with that than the
Yeah.
truly
And,
scary ones.
I was discussing the same vein with a friend because she was like, "Well, how scary?" Because I had a teenage boy, shocker, get in my face one night at the show and say, "You're not scary." In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, "Well, no, you're getting jump scared mostly at a haunted house or a production and in horror movies." But the actual fear comes in when you're watching a really good horror movie and you're scared for the characters, you're concerned for them, you care. And Bhavna and I, our last 3 or 4 episodes, have been discussing how anytime we've been let down recently by a movie is because the stakes have not been high enough to make us care about the characters.
Mhm.
They've been very throwaway. And I think that goes back to what we were both saying about slashers. So many slashers just treat their characters as props because that's sort of the shtick, right?
Yep.
And Scream doesn't. Scream shows you why you should care about these people, and most good slashers do. I would argue the first 2 Texas Chainsaw Massacres definitely do, as goofy as the second one really gets. But Halloween 1 and 2, I care about Jamie Lee Curtis's character. I want her to live. She's one of my favorite final girls.
And you care about them once again for not shitty Reagan era moral reasons. You care about them because
Right.
they're complete people that you
Yeah.
like. Once again, it's one of my little bits of Cabin in the Woods where they say something about her being a virgin and she levels her eyes at them and
She's
goes,
like,
virgin? And they go, well, we have to take what we can get these
right.
days. And
And yeah, God, it's so good.
it was so good because, and the whole point in that, like, I love have you ever listened to the commentary, by the way? Oh, it sucks because you have to hear Joss Whedon before, now we know he all sucks, but still, it's good.
Well, no,
It's a,
I listened to it because when it first came out on DVD, my college roommate at the time snatched it up, and we lived together the year after college too, and we would routinely put it on. I mean, it's just so God, it makes me mad because as shitty of as a person as he turned out to be, his dialogue is just so good.
It's so good because I love my favorite thing when they talk about is they show the one scene and they were like, I remember shooting this and we went, oh, this is when they realized Chris Hemsworth was going to be a huge action star.
Yes.
And there was just that moment, but like even him, he's not a caricature, right? Like that's he is and he isn't, and they have to make him one. I just it's playing with the whole trope that goes with all that. And I was like scary moments in non-scary movies to your point, like
Yes.
Jurassic Park, right?
Holy.
One of the scariest
Yes.
moments is her in the kitchen, and is the raptor going to figure out how to open the door or not? And or even before then, when she's jiggling, she's trying to eat the Jello, and it
The
starts to
Jello.
jiggle, and it's such a great like they see it in the distance, and like you said,
It's the inevitable. It's
it's
coming.
inevitable. It goes back to the roller coaster. It's climbing the ride, and or doing the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror if you've ever done it. When are they going to
Oh,
drop me?
I
Right,
love it
like
so much. Yeah.
those are the moments, and I do think bad horror loses that is the moment. The jump scare's not what bad. The jump scare's the release. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I mean, because especially thinking about walking through Netherworld, and obviously that's what's fresh in my mind right now. There's so much to look at because the scenery and props team just go so far. Set deck goes above and beyond. Everyone's sort of sensory overwhelmed and they're nervous because they're like, okay, when's the thing going to pop out? When am I going to get scared? And so, like you were saying, the jump scare is the is the release. It's the funny part. And 9 times out of 10, after I scare someone, they laugh
oh
because
yeah
they're like,
yeah.
why did I jump at that?
It
So funny.
it's like it's like if you're doing kind of a stupid stunt and you hurt yourself. Like so as a guy, right? Somebody who was
Right.
really into wrestling and we used to do all that. Like the thing that you laugh, it hurts like hell, but you laugh
Yeah.
about it because it was sort of like, but I did it to myself, right?
Right. Right.
That's
Or
I
yeah, like when you fall, like when you finally bust your ass when you're walking on ice or something and you
yeah.
know you're gonna do it. It's stuff like that. And there's just so many good subgenres in horror that give us that healthy exploration. I mean, I know we don't really have time to talk about it, but like I said, I'm huge into Giallo and I'm also huge into any pretty much any quote unquote foreign horror film, but Possession is a big one for me.
Uh,
Love Possession. Who among us, for people who've seen that, y'all, that subway scene, who among us has not felt like doing that in public more than once in our lives? It's so cathartic. And I think that's the word that we've sort of been circling around the whole episode is horror is a catharsis in a way that other genres just can't give us except for heist movies. And I talked
yes.
about this on Blue Sky recently. Heist movies make us feel like we're smart and we're in on it. And they are mostly, yeah, mostly victimless crimes. But heist horror is something I've had bubbling in the back of my mind for a long time. But yeah, I wish I had enough of a vocabulary to accurately portray via podcast medium what horror means to me.
Hmm.
And especially going back to, you brought up Twilight Zone in terms of Tower of Terror, but Twilight Zone was one of the TV shows that would come on at late at night, and I would watch it and fall asleep to Rod Serling's voice and just exploring the social themes. I mean,
Yes.
that TV show, there's a reason they let Jordan Peele try to remake it. You know what I mean? Like it needs to be done justice. And I really like the new version. I know it was very controversial, but I also like X-Files and the new X-Files. And so it's always this sort of running commentary.
And I think it'll make for a great concluding point in all
Yeah.
of this as we're running, because I do think, like, because I've mentioned, like, my primary genre is like sci-fi and fantasy in film, and I love that, and that gives us other ways to analyze life, but they don't have the catharsis and the payoff. I mean, there's sci-fi horror and there's fantasy horror and all that stuff, but you got to
Yeah.
have the horror element. I think you have got to have the spooky, scary, unsettling stuff. Um,
Yes.
and the few times where sci-fi delves into that, there are actually horror elements, right? So you take Dune and, like, Baron Harkonnen is sort of a
Oh
body
God.
horror type
Yeah.
creature, and like that
Yes.
that gives you those moments. I think what you just touched on there so perfect. It's the only place you can do it. It is a genre where, without without just making snuff films,
Yeah.
it's the only place that allows us to go, let's explore this. And I love, just to kind of conclude on it, especially not quite horror, but adjacent to it. I also love a thing like a Dexter, or something where
Oh,
you're around that,
love Dexter.
where
Yeah.
you are being challenged. Hell, The Sopranos, even though it's not a horror show, where it's like,
Yes.
I have to be challenged about why I'm relating to this person. Ultimately, that's what you need to be thinking about at the end of all of it. And I do think horror gives us that, once again, especially in the ones where the monster maybe is the villain or is not, but if they're also seductive and attractive, I really enjoy those. I think that's the part, because
Yeah.
I have to analyze what it is about that person I'm attracted to. Or that being,
Yeah.
or that whatever else. And horror just is the best mechanism for it.
Yes. And final note, I promise, but horror in general not just challenges us, but also gives us room for an emotion that I think is considered ugly by the society in different degrees, which is grief.
Mm,
And it's sort of become a trope now that, of the mid 2000s, especially where to late 2010s, where, the real monster was grief all along, like
yeah.
the ghost or whatever. But truly, those movies, starting with the Babadook forward, got me through some pretty rough times
Yeah.
because I related so heavily to those characters. And again, like you said, just to put a button on it, horror gives us space to play with
Yes.
toys under supervision that might otherwise blow us up.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent way to put it. We will revisit this. We'll find a movie. Maybe I'll
Yes.
watch The Substance and we'll talk about it. We'll come up with
It's going to blow your mind.
Let's come up with something, because I
Yeah.
just love this. It's been so much fun. Sadly, I have to return to speaking of horror movies, I have to
Dad
return to the
duties.
reality of my dad duties and everything else head into the weekend. I have my own horror movie. I have an undefeated Georgia Tech team to figure out
Oh,
what my emotions are. This is terrible.
oh, yeah,
So,
no. Alabama plays South Carolina this weekend, and I'm going to be at work for the second half.
uh,
So,
maybe good. Maybe that's good.
yeah,
Maybe that's
I don't know.
good.
We'll see. We'll
We'll
see.
see. Well, Jamie, it was a pleasure as always. Enjoyed this. I know we could keep going forever. We will obviously find other stuff to talk about. I will wrap it up somewhat quickly. So just once again, what's the Hold Up Pod? Thanks. It's available where your podcasts are at. Like, subscribe, share, all those good things for me, and we will see you soon.